Okay, so let's get started. Buonasera, welcome everybody. Welcome to celebrating the feast of Saint Joseph. Welcome, benvenuti. Sandra, is Teresa able to connect with this person that is coming in and tell her not to connect with this link?
The name?
I see her as Sandra. I don't know why.
I don't know who that is. I don't know.
So again, welcome everybody, benvenuti to celebrating the feast of Saint Joseph with us. We are excited because this is our third installment of our series, our Voyage, Italian American Stories. This is a series that we organize, IM Books organizes in partnership with NIAF, National Italian American Foundation. So welcome again, I am Chiara Durazzini, and I am the events coordinator at IM Books. IM Books is an Italian and Italian American bookstore. We are located at 124 Salem Street in Boston, in the heart of the North End. So when you are around, if you are in Boston, come and visit us. I am very excited today. We have a lot of people, a lot of friends coming to celebrate with us San Giuseppe. Yes, because you know, our Irish friends are going to celebrate St. Patrick's Day in just a couple of days. For us Italian, we particularly love San Giuseppe, Saint Joseph. Maybe Saint Joseph is the symbol of being a father of family, and we know that we Italians and Italian Americans love family, right? La famiglia italiana. Buonasera a tutti. Thank you for commenting. Yes, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A or comment in the chat. And I think that it would be fabulous if not only you say where you're watching from, but also perhaps if you feel like sharing what is your favorite St. Joseph tradition or food, because we are also going to talk a lot about food. But now, let's get started and let me introduce you our special guest of tonight. We have Sandra Scalise Juneau and we have Kirsten Keppel. Let me read very quickly their bios. Sandra Scalise Juneau is a native New Orleanian of Sicilian heritage, has created cultural exhibits for public display at Hallmark Card Company New York, the Louisiana World's Fair, and the Louisiana Folklife Festival. The St. Joseph altars she designed remain on permanent exhibit at the Southern Food and Beverage Museum and the American Italian Cultural Center in New Orleans. She lives in Madisonville, Louisiana. Buonasera, Sandra. And then we have Kirsten Keppel. She is a 2017 Russo Brothers Italian American Film Forum semifinalist for Ringraziamenti, the St. Joseph's Day table tradition, which we'll show afterward. Okay, so stay here because we will show this fabulous 18-minute documentary. Kirsten is a member and volunteer videographer for the Abruzzo and Molise Heritage Society of Washington, D.C., and a regular contributor to Ambassador magazine of the National Italian American Foundation. Her poetry has appeared in Mediterranean Poetry, the Chesapeake Reader, Lombardi Voices, and other literary journals. Welcome, benvenute Kirsten, benvenuta Sandra. Oh, so many comments already. All right, so Today, this event is more or less in two parts. The first part is gonna be about this beautiful book celebrating with St. Joseph altars that Sandra wrote and that I have to say I enjoyed very much because not only it talks about the tradition of how to celebrate St. Joseph in Louisiana in particular, in New Orleans, but also has so many delicious recipes. And in fact, I put a mark on my favorite, which is carciofi fritti, fried artichokes. Okay, so very, very interesting book. So, Sandra, would you like to talk a little bit about your book and maybe we can share the slides? You have a PowerPoint slideshow.
Yes, thank you, Chiara. And my thanks first to St.Joseph for bringing us together in such a loving way. My experience of having grown up with this beautiful tradition in my home in New Orleans with two Sicilian grandmothers has been extraordinary in the way St. Joseph has connected people through this tradition. So our thanks to St.Joseph for bringing us together here tonight and continues to connect us in such an amazing way. My thanks to IAM Books, to your co-founder, Nicola, and please pronounce his last name for me, please.
Nicola Oricuia. Yes, Nicola Oricuia. Yeah.
You know, I never learned to speak the language, but I cook it. So
That's great.
to Kirsten Keppel for allowing me to share her beautiful story about the San Giuseppe feast. We are so indebted to the Russo brothers, the Italian American Film Forum, the Italian Sons and Daughters of America, and the National Italian American Foundation for making this possible. We are excited, and the book for me has been a joy to present. It was published through Louisiana State University Press. It is part of a series of cookbooks. You know, food in Louisiana is, we talk about at one meal what's coming up at the next meal and what we're celebrating next. Celebrations abound. So this book was published through Louisiana State University Press. They have included it in a series of cookbooks called The Southern Table, which is truly an honor to our Italian American heritage. The book was several years in production, and each part of it has so much to tell of what I learned as a child and in my grandmother's kitchen. It all began for me in my grandmother's kitchen. The recipes that were infused into my soul, that of many recipes that were in such huge portions, had to be broken down into portions for home kitchen use. Many we thought would be lost forever after Hurricane Katrina. So this little book has been such a keepsake and a special blessing to many, many people who thought they had lost this tradition. Shall we begin with the slides? So in celebrating the Feast of St. Joseph, it is a celebration of promise, petition, and thanksgiving. This tradition began in Sicily sometime in the Middle Ages. It was an oral tradition handed down from family to family. Very little was written about the celebration of the Feast of St. Joseph with the St. Joseph altar tradition, probably until the early 20th century. But Sicily had been the crossroads of civilization going back to ancient times. And every culture wanted Sicily for its plum location in the Mediterranean. You know, in real estate, we know location, location, location. Well, Sicily has always had that special privilege. Each culture who conquered Sicily from time to time left their cultural spin, particularly in the foods of Sicily. So we have influences from the Etruscans, the Romans, the Greeks, the Arabs, the Normans, the French, the Spanish, going into the 20th century. The Arab influence in Sicilian food is so prevalent in what we consider to be Sicilian food: the eggplant, the sugary desserts. The Arabs introduced eggplants, sugarcane, rice, many spices from the Orient. So Sicily has a rich heritage of food, and every time you take a bite of Sicilian food, you are biting into centuries of culture. The connection between Sicily and Louisiana was the citrus crop. In 1830s, the Palermo was shipping citrus to Louisiana, which was the port of entry and the port of exit for many ships going to South America. And citrus was so important to navigation because the sailors needed citrus to avoid the scurvy, the terrible illness of sailors. So bringing the lemons and oranges to Sicily in the 1830s also brought Sicilians who stayed in Louisiana and settled. Another part of the, so if we'll go to the port of Louisiana, this is the port of entry where ships came and up and down the Atlantic coast going into South America. What came in from Europe was shipped through to the ports in South America. So the fava bean, by legend, is said to have been the sustaining crop in Sicily during the famine that occurred apparently sometime in the 12th century. The fava bean had been used as fodder for cattle. It was not a crop that Sicilians normally ate. Sicily had been the breadbasket of Rome. Wheat grew to abundance, as many other things proliferated in Sicily. But the fava bean became a symbol of hope, and particularly to those Sicilians who came to Louisiana. The fava bean, the life-saving crop, became the symbol of their hope. Next slide, please. So as the Sicilians entered the port of Louisiana, there are many reasons. The 1830s connection to Palermo with citrus, but also following the American Civil War, young men in Sicily were recruited to work the cane fields of Louisiana because there was a huge labor shortage, and the plantation owners actually took out ads to bring young men over from Sicily to work because they knew they had worked in farming. It was a series of patrons who helped this process. There were many layers, and each person who made a contract had to agree to work for 2 years to pay for that passage. The passage itself was not that expensive, but the many hands in between, it took 2 years to pay for that passage. During that time, the men only came. They lived in the abandoned slave quarters. They worked from sunup to sundown in the sweltering heat of Louisiana's cane fields, but they also had the enterprise to grow their own vegetables, sell those vegetables to the plantation owners, and earn their side money so that eventually they were able to send for family members. It's an extraordinary story that's now being told. And in fact, there will be a monument to the immigrants on the riverfront in Louisiana near where those cane fields were. It's a beautiful story that is finally being told. The Sicilians who came went into many different enterprises, all related to food. This is a picture of my great-grandparents on my father's side, the Materana family. They had a strawberry farm in Louisiana, north of New Orleans. It's still a strawberry growing region. There's a little town there called Independence, Louisiana, which is all Sicilian American families into the 3rd and 4th and 5th generations who celebrate the beautiful foods and the tradition of St. Joseph altars. They settled next. Many of them went into the grocery business, and as farmers brought their produce to the French market. And the next slide is of the French market, bringing their produce to the French market. At one time in the early 20th century, the French market was known as Little Palermo because there was so many Sicilian-owned businesses, restaurants, and grocery stores, and the families always lived on the property with the storefront on the street level. The home was either behind or upstairs. So Little Palermo thrived with those names that I so remember as a child, going to the French market and hearing the Lama family, the Maturana family, the Matranga family, all of those families who were farmers and brought their produce to sell in the French market. Every part of the food culture in Louisiana has been infused with Sicilian heritage from ground to table. And of course, every corner in the French Quarter and in other parts of the city was dotted with a Sicilian-owned grocery store. This is a picture from the 1920s of my Scalise family, of their grocery store in the inner city. Early St. Joseph's altars were very typical of the way they had been prepared in Sicily, in 3 layers to symbolize the Holy Family, always embellished with the finest of family linens. And there was a sacredness to this tradition that you have to experience. And my purpose for this book was to teach about it from an insider's point of view. Everything else I had read about St. Joseph altars seemed to have an outsider's viewpoint, but I wanted to tell the story as I had grown up and learned from an insider's point of view. So the St. Joseph's altars, this is a recent picture, maybe within the last 5 years, of a St. Joseph altar in Poggio Reale, the hometown of my maternal grandmother. And the tradition there is to prepare for St. Joseph the best that you can offer. Beautiful breads in religious shape, beautiful fig cakes called cuccidadi. In some cultures, they're called spera, which each one has a religious symbolism. And the interesting thing about this is that in the Middle Ages, the stained glass windows of the cathedrals were used as teaching tools to an illiterate population. For this population, going back to the Middle Ages, these sacred symbols were used in that same manner as teaching tools to tell the stories of religious heritage. The next slide is of the town of Salemi, which is very close to Poggio Reale, but their spin on a St. Joseph altar is totally different. They prepare a non-edible bread dough. They embellish their St. Joseph altar, their storefronts and their doorways with this non-edible bread dough. Artistic pieces, each representing some way of the heritage of Catholic religion and honor of St. Joseph. The meals are meant to be a communal feast. All of the food that is prepared, the savory and sweet foods, are placed on the altar, blessed in a special ceremony, and then there is a communal feast. Everyone in the community, family, friends, neighbors, come and share in this wonderful feast. And there are special traditional foods that are associated with the St. Joseph altar. This is an altar of my maternal grandmother in her home from the 1940s. This is probably during World War II. After World War II, the homes became so overwhelmed with the number of people coming through that the altars were brought to public spaces, and my grandmother's altar was brought to the convent of the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd nuns, if we go to the next slide, this is from the 1940s, later 40s, maybe 45 or 6, during or after World War II. They had a beautiful community center where thousands of people filed through to visit the altar, leave donations, and were fed an amazing meal of those special foods. They would set up tables in the back patio, and it was an extraordinary happening. The next slide shows the abundanza, the abundance of all of those beautiful foods. Vegetables cooked in every imaginable way, using breadcrumbs, stuffed eggplants, stuffed artichokes, stuffed peppers. And my joke is that if you appear in someone's kitchen in the days before St. Joseph's altar, you are going to be stuffed in some way with something delicious, you know, stuffed eggplant or artichokes, but always using those breadcrumbs because bread is sacred to Sicilians. It is never wasted. So leftover day-old bread is always repurposed and made into breadcrumbs for another use. Next slide, please. This shows the community of people working right now, every day, in every home, every church parish in our area, and certainly across the United States. People are working together in the most amazing way, all in honor of St. Joseph, using family recipes that go back many, many, many years. I always say, as you're rolling out the dough, the family stories come rolling out. It's always wonderful to have multi-generations to share and learn those stories. Next slide, please. This is something that occurred sometime in the 1960s, the Italian-American pride. Most of the families who came from Sicily related to their region. And even today, there are people who are members of the Cefaluttana Society or the Poggioreale Society or the Ustican Society. They did not relate to being Italian-American, and even today do not. They relate to being from their ancestral heritage. However, on St. Joseph's altars, the red, white, and green flags started to appear, and they show up even in the fava beans that have been striped in the colors red, white, and green. Next slide, please. This is showing the process of making the cuccidati. To my right is the fig paste filling. So it's like a pie, a layer of dough, a layer of fig filling shaped into a specific shape. And then you, it's a form of sculpting that's done in dough. Next slide, please. This is a replica of the monstrance that is venerated at benediction. This is one of the pieces that I formed in fig dough. These pieces are meant to be eaten at the communal feast after they've been blessed. They are broken. You know, you don't cut bread, you break bread. They are broken and shared with the community. But this represents in the center, the IHS, the center, which is the symbol of the sacred host. All of the flowers are connected to a singular stem, which represents unity in Christ. And that is for every cuccidati design. Next slide, please. So this is the hard process. Layer of dough, layer of figs. Next, please. This is the top laying, which is like a blank canvas. So you sculpt in what your design is going to be. And then like Michelangelo, who said, I just take away what isn't needed. That's what happens here. Many people think that you cut the design and just apply them on top, but no, it is actually cut out from. There is no mold or anything. It's all how the spirit moves you. Next slide, please. So this is the Sacred Heart working on that. Next slide, please. And this is the finished Sacred Heart of Mary design with the flowers to a singular stem. And at the top, there is the embellishment in quilling with dough that represents the flame of the Sacred Heart. Next, please. And there's the cross, which represents the risen Christ with the flowers in bloom. And the palm, which represents the early Christian martyrs. And this is a St. Joseph altar that I prepared for a plantation restaurant locally in Mandeville, Louisiana, Benedict's Plantation Restaurant. And this shows the monstrance again on a St. Joseph altar at a beautiful restaurant in the city called Avo Restaurant. A wonderful Sicilian chef, young chef. Their display is magnificent every year. The breads come in many shapes, the fish, the cross, the rose of Mary. Next, we have breads in the shape of crawfish. Next slide. Louisiana alligators, and also the pignolati. And this is the Southern Food and Beverage Museum, where the foods were prepared in a salt dough, which is a non-edible permanent display. Next, this is the blessing of the St. Joseph altar, Father Beau Charbonnet in Metairie, Louisiana. Next, the fish, the symbol of abundance, the feeding of the fishes to the loaves and fishes, is always on the St. Joseph's altar, and you can see the stuffed artichokes. Next, the pasta con la sarde is the mainstay dish. It's a pasta made with fresh sardines or anchovies with currants and pine nuts. That recipe is in the book with the moudica topping, which is the breadcrumb topping. Next, this is at the African American University, Xavier University in Louisiana in New Orleans. And their St. Joseph altar takes their culture and covers the tables with the kente cloth, a tribal cloth that has specific spiritual meaning for them. It was a joy to be able to work with those students and with that university to prepare their first ever St. Joseph altar. Many cultures have embraced the St. Joseph altar, Hispanic, Asian American, each one puts their cultural spin. And even the Anglican churches and my dear Jewish friend celebrates St. Joseph altars with us. This is a home St. Joseph altar at my home. During the pandemic, we had to get creative. So what we're showing are some of the hand crocheted doilies that I have from my great-grandmother. And the statue of St. Joseph was from that St. Joseph altar at Hallmark Card Company in New York in the 60s. And, you know, the whole tradition is about abundanza, the abundance of sharing, the circle of everlasting love. The fruit represents that abundanza. So my wish for you is that you will visit a St. Joseph altar, that you will find inside of this little book something that will inspire you to celebrate this beautiful tradition. Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing, amazing. Thank you, Sandra. Again, this is the book. You can buy it through IM Books. I just posted the link if you want to buy it online, or you can go to the store. We also have, I want to remind everybody that for all our events, our virtual events, as a registrant, you will have a 10% discount with that code that I wrote in the chat, but it's IM Books 2022. We have so many amazing comments, Sandra and Kirsten. You know, many people are saying, you know, my favorite food is the zeppole, or I particularly like things with crumbs, and I agree, you know, the mollica, right? So we have people from everywhere. We have people from Connecticut, California. I saw a lot of people from Boston. So welcome everybody again. This is a pleasure to have you here, and also, you know, to read your comments and read your favorite things about San Giuseppe, St. Joseph. Kirsten, do you have any comments, or we should perhaps show your documentary?
I would just like to say grazie, Sandra. That was beautiful. And I was smiling because when I made this film, I knew I had to bring New Orleans into it. And 5 years later, look how New Orleans is coming in. Yours is the book that I needed when I started. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And if you loved Sandra's presentation, you'll love it times 10 with this book.
Yeah, even because I was saying before, not only gives the historical information and the information about the tradition, but it has a lot of recipes. So, it's always nice. All right, so let's see if if I can share the video for all of you and enjoy this beautiful documentary. Those elderly ladies are so sweet. So I hope you will enjoy it. This is, however, is on the NIAF website, if I'm not mistaken. Perhaps, Kirsten, you can write the link if you have it available to the NIAF documentary so that people can also maybe watch it later or watch it again. And let's see. You see it?
Culinary diplomat and connector of worlds old and new. Zeppole di San Giuseppe served as ricotta-filled reminders of my Italian roots every March 19th. St. Joseph's Day brought to me a bite of joy amidst Lenten simplicity in the Italian-American family kitchens of upstate New York. Flour and dough coated Formica tables. Sweet cream with lemon flavor and chocolate chips slipped down my throat. Italy danced through the first floors of New York duplexes, knifed through the freshly baked desserts and dishes on the kitchen counters. Beneath the surface, language held power. I wanted to zoom in on that power. Beyond honoring a fond memory by participating in the St.Joseph's Day table at the National Italian American Foundation in my hometown of Washington, D.C., I wanted to fill in what lay behind the pastry.
It's a tradition which is now in our family in the third generation.
I think it honors our Italian-American heritage, it honors our devotion, and most of all, it continues this wonderful tradition.
It's really a labor of love for everybody. We just, nobody really wants any recognition. We just want to do it, and because it's just a good deed.
Porto questa tradizione di San Giuseppe nel mio cuore e fare i zippoli e preparare il tavolo per San Giuseppe e dare per i bambini poveri. Tutti i vicinati le davano una zippola e un bicchiere di vino a tutti i vicinati, e tanto a queste cose io sempre mi ricordo la festa di San Giuseppe.
What began as a close-up on a cream puff revealed a labor of love across latitudes. Wherever Sicilian immigrants passed on the tradition, a St. Joseph's Day table may be found. Now that the tradition is being passed down to the fourth and fifth generation descendants of Sicilian and Italian immigrants, some express concern it may be fading. Although every family, parish, and community may do the table differently, each table has 3 levels that represent the Holy Trinity. The table also symbolizes a deeper fellowship of spirit.
The table is a source of life, it's the fount of life. It represents table fellowship, I think, in every culture. Sharing a meal, whether there's a table physically or not, sharing a meal is very, very special. When someone would invite someone to their table, to a meal, to share food with them, they were very much sharing their lives, because they might not have much more.
Why has this tradition lasted since at least the Middle Ages? Will younger generations still want to carry it on?
People like to remember their traditions and heritage and their own regions, their own towns, their own cities. Everyone has a different type of remembrance of St. Joseph. I hope it continues with the newer generation, but from what I could see, I don't know, they all go out to eat and they don't care about it until they get older.
It's something that, as I've gotten older, I felt a need for. When I was a kid, you just take things for granted. But as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that these things are pretty great, and we need to continue.
Different theories exist as to how the tradition began. The legend upon which most people agree recounts how the table started on Sicily's parched soil, with pleas and prayers for rain.
The story is of St. Joseph back in Sicily in years past, Middle Ages. There was a severe drought, and basically the only thing that the people could eat that they had left were the fava beans. It was basically food for cattle at the time, but they were able to sustain themselves on the fava beans. And so naturally, they prayed to St. Joseph, and when the rains finally came, after the harvest, they erected an altar in his honor.
San Giuseppe was, and still is, a very important feast on the island. It's a very, people feel it, and, this goes down generation by generation.
St. Joseph could be called the silent saint, who never utters a word in Scripture. Yet his example speaks to many of a humble and loving figure.
Joseph is kind of a universal guy, a husband, a foster father, a worker, someone who earned his keep by his daily work. In fact, the Greek term that describes him in the New Testament isn't specifically carpenter, it's laborer, where one day he'd be repairing a wall, the next day working on someone's roof, another day doing some carpentry type work, another day helping someone with their harvest or press out the grapes or the olives or anything like that.
He was about protecting an infant. He was about protecting a pregnant woman. He was about raising a son with a craft. It's a very, very loving figure. In all of Catholicism, I can't find a more loving saint. So that there again, there's something essential in that Italian soul that says, I want a loving symbol. I want a symbol that says there's kindness and gentleness here, as well as holiness.
The Chimenti family is celebrating St. Joseph's Day for the 99th year by having a table. Julian Chimenti grew up attending the feast.
We started off with the priest, the local priest, saying grace, etc., and then a little story about St. Joseph. And then they would have the traditional, the first 3 servings were traditional. The first was a slice of orange and a piece of bread. The second was 2 servings of homemade noodles. One was what we call pasta con lenticchie, and the other was pasta con sard. The sard was sardines, and then it was made with a tomato sauce. And the other one with the lenticchie was mostly fennel and stuff. Both were delicious.
On Palermo side, so Trapani province, Palermo province, what is very common is the pasta con le sarde. They use a lot of dill, and especially very common in Sicily is raisins and pine nuts. We have bucatini, which is kind of a thinner spaghetti with a hole in it, and dill, anchovies or sarde, and pine nuts and raisin.
The one that I used to like the most was bacala, which is codfish. I love it. And then we would work our way through a meal and then start having other refreshments. And I always look forward to having the artichokes. I loved artichokes.
I have memories of the long buffet table, and I really enjoyed the fact that all the cousins were together.
Yeah, right.
And most of the time I don't think I knew what I was eating, because I just didn't know, but I knew it tasted good.
Baltimore's St. Leo the Great Catholic Church is in the heart of Little Italy. Joseph Tusa moved with his family from New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. They brought the St. Joseph's Day table tradition with them.
Basically, everybody on the block, I feel like I'm related to it. It's like my great aunt or my grandmother, So it's wonderful. It really is. It's such a nice community, and that really, for the first time, and it was like 9 years after Katrina, I could see myself. Yeah, this is where I want to be. This is a nice community. So I felt like home.
I took Joseph as my confirmation name. So having that already in mind, and when Joe said, we want to do St. Joseph's table, I wasn't entirely certain what it was, but I said, I like the idea already.
So naturally, when we got here, it was just a natural question for me to ask. St. Joseph's Day is coming up. Do we celebrate in any way?
3 years ago, Joe Tusa talked to me and asked me if I would help, because he came here from Louisiana, and he brought the tradition of having the St. Joseph table, where we made a lot of cookies and spinach and fava beans, which is supposed to be a good luck. And I started helping by baking some cookies and bring traditional things, rosary, statues, pretty linens, and that's my share of it.
I always help to feed the hungry. So this is a continuation. St. Joseph's table means to feed the poor.
I've been doing it too. I make a few of the cookies, I help for the altar, whatever we do.
Now this year we actually had for the first time, we actually had a meal. We actually had a feast, which came off pretty well. We were surprised. We did a traditional meatless dish. We did the pasta con sarde. We did it with penne pasta. Traditionally it's with bucatini, but we figured people would have a lot of trouble twirling and stuff, and it would be a big mess. So we decided to go with something that was easy for everyone to handle. We did a salad with that. It was an orange and fennel salad, which came out pretty good. Everybody was really happy with the way it turned out, and whatever we had left over, we donated to the mission. Yeah, so it was pretty fun.
But also in Palermo is very famous the Sfinci, what we call Sfinci di San Giuseppe. Now Sfinci is a very interesting word because it comes from Latin spongia, which means sponge. And it makes perfect sense to me because the texture of them is like a spongy cake. So they are like a puffy paste, stuffed or filled up with sweet ricotta.
And what it is, it's a cream puff batter. You could either fry them or you could bake them. I used to fry them. Nobody was worried about their weight. Nobody was worried about cholesterol.
Baltimore's Piedi Grotta Bakery makes zeppole every March.
We get calls throughout the year from people asking us when we're going to make them again. How often are we going to make them? Can't you just make them special for us? Now, I'm sorry, I can't. We make them once a year for a couple reasons. First is because they're special. They're made intentionally just to honor St. Joseph, and there's a tradition behind that we want to honor and respect, and so we don't do it. And secondly, they are kind of labor intensive. It takes a good long day to make the multiple batches of zeppole that we make. So I put raw batter into the oil, and then as it cooks, it expands and it gets holes inside, and it gets all holy. And the holes and the space inside is, of course, the space we need to put the cream or the ricotta or whatever mixture that baker wants to put in. So as it cooks in the oil, the holes start to form and the batter becomes lighter, and so the top is heavier and it flips itself over so that the heavy part goes underneath and then that starts to cook itself. And then by the time it's done, it rolls itself over and it gets itself nice and holy and airy and fried. And then we'll take that out and let that cool. So what I'm doing now is filling the zeppole with our cream. And different places fill the zeppole with different mixtures and creams or ricotta or chocolate, different things. This is our mixture that we use, and it's our secret recipe. I like to move the tip around inside here to make sure I get all the corners because it's kind of holy and there's sort of little chambers in here, so I like to make sure I get them all. And then once the zeppole are filled, we take our confection sugar. Powder them up, and they're ready.
New Orleanians living elsewhere recall the annual St. Joseph's Day Parade and elaborate tables called altars in Louisiana.
The St. Joseph's table was a very strong tradition in New Orleans.
The Sicilians in particular have had a very difficult journey in New Orleans, and it's very important to say there's a time to be very prideful, to be Sicilian, to be Italian, to be Catholic. And New Orleans is that place where you can actually be prideful as a Sicilian, as an Italian, as a Catholic. And the St. Joseph altar and the parade just happened to be that particular time when during the Lenten season it's a big deal. The altar is a family community time.
I'm talking about the fig cookies. That's my favorite thing in the entire world. It's it's the cucciadati, and it's the Italian fig cookies, and it's made with the orange marmalade and figs and currant raisins, and it's It's like the best fig Newton in the entire world.
And you don't have to be Catholic to really appreciate it, but if you are, and particularly growing up Catholic in New Orleans, you kind of get it.
What makes this labor-intensive activity worth all the work?
I think it's important. I think in our world today, we do not have enough of this, of thankfulness, of gratitude, and faith. And I think it will help our society so much if we could return to this. And we did have young people coming to the dinner. They enjoyed it, and they expressed ideas about coming and participating next year.
Well, my children, I have 3, they participate in the St. Joseph's every year if they are able to. They really enjoy it, and I'm not sure that they realize the significance of the family tradition.
Yeah.
But I can say that they don't like to miss it. It's a fun night of storytelling, and I would hope that as they get older and marry and have their own families, that they will continue this tradition. And I really think they will. I think they will.
But we want to keep up that tradition. We want to remember that great history. And we want to make sure that it's not forgotten, that it's still celebrated in some way.
We don't do this on our own. You don't just suddenly show up one day and you've accomplished all this all by yourself. This is a generational thing that's all led to you. It's all come down to you now, and it's your responsibility to try and pass that on as best you can. I realized when I thought back about my life, when I thought about the things that were most important in my life, when I thought about the happiest times of my life, it wasn't about becoming a vice president of news. It was about my family. It was about those times growing up as a kid, the different things that we could do. It was about the celebrations that we had as a family. That was where the joy was. The achievement was in going through the American school system. The achievement was in graduating first in my class in college. The achievement was showing them what I could do, not because I was Italian, but because, that was my father's thing. This is your job. Here's my job. My job is to make sure you're educated so that you're out there and that you can compete. But I realized the joy in my life wasn't about what I had achieved. The joy in my life is about what I had been given. And what I had been given by a bunch of people who were less educated than me, but a lot happier in a lot of sense. Here are people that got on a boat, said goodbye to their mother and father, never saw them ever again, went to a foreign country where they weren't particularly welcomed, and dug in so that I could say, this is what I've achieved.
Spero che tutti ricordano e porteranno questa festa nel cuore, come l'ho sempre portata io.
My childhood elders punctuated kitchen and living room conversations with instructions to thank St. Joseph with a grazie, San Giuseppe. I still do. 6 years ago, my mother and I landed in Rome for the first time together on March 19th. St. Joseph's Day. Our Italian family greeted us with platefuls of zeppole.
We did good? Did we do good?
You did phenomenally.
E buona festa di San Giuseppe a tutti e sempre Forza Sicilia.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is a very beautiful documentary, very sweet. We have so many comments. I have to read them all. I hope you guys are keeping up with them. Yeah, Beddu, yes. Yeah, molto bello. Yes, yes. Kristen. I found the story very interesting about figs. Figs are definitely my DNA. Just love them. I need to make some fig cookies. This is Marie Alessi. Yes, you know, it's too bad that in the States it's hard to grow fig trees, right? All right, so we also have a question from Catherine Goddy. She's writing, I was wondering if some people celebrate St. Joseph's Medical Center in the past by collecting food for the food banks in our town too. Do we know anything about this, Kirsten or Sandra?
I'm not familiar with the, what is the facility
St. Joseph Medical Center.
and where is it?
It doesn't say. I don't know, doesn't say. Maybe donating food, you know.
Yes.
Sarah is writing, I think in New York. Might be in New York.
I have to say that during the pandemic, when everything had been prepared for the St. Joseph altars and the pandemic struck and we were not able to celebrate publicly, many of the church parishes packaged up all of the wonderful cookies and sent them to the medical staff and first responders. And that has been so appreciated. You know, in Sicilian culture, no food is ever wasted. And that food was so well received and appreciated.
Yeah, I think in all for us Italians and Italian Americans, right? No food gets wasted, right? I mean, it's yeah. Yes, we have some other comments. The film, Maria Jura writes, the film gave me the chills, connecting me all over again to my mother's and family's St. Joseph traditions. So rich and beautiful. Yes. Catherine Goddy, yeah, she's clarifying. We at the church and the medical center here donated to the food banks. So, Catherine, can you tell us if it's in New York? And then we have another question from Cynthia. She's saying, Sandra mentioned the monument to Italian immigrants near the cane fields in Louisiana. Where exactly is this going to be built? Which town in Louisiana?
It's going to be on the Homus House Plantation, which I'm not sure the exact little town, but it's between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. The monument is being prepared by Franco Alessandrini, who is a wonderful sculptor from Italy who lives in New Orleans. It's going to be an extraordinary piece. Franco has also done a beautiful piece that's on the riverfront in New Orleans, which is a monument to the immigrants. His work is magnificent. So we're truly excited in our community to welcome that and to be able to share that story.
Yes, very nice, very nice. I see, wait, who else is writing about Sandra? I don't know why she's coming in. So my friends, we have so many comments. I will get the chat, download the chat when we are done, and I will send them to you, Sandra and Kirsten, so that you can read them and enjoy them because we have so many comments. Giovanni Caruso is saying St. John's University in New York will be holding a St. Joseph feast this upcoming Sunday with La Tavolata and Sicilian Luncheon. So if you are in New York, this is good to know, right? So if we don't have any other question or any other comments, I would like to wrap up the event. But first of all, I want to really thank from the bottom of my heart Sandra and Kirsten for participating. This has been very nice. I hope that all of us can celebrate in a certain way St. Joseph, San Giuseppe, this March 19. I am going to make frittelle di riso. We in Tuscany make rice fritters. That's, you know, a complete different tradition. This is amazing to see how in Italy we are, you know, so diverse and differentiate each other from region to region, right? So I'm gonna make frittelle di riso, which I love, and I hope to see many of you at our next events. We have so many that I can't even tell them now, all of them, because otherwise we are gonna be too late. But I would like to thank our guests tonight and NIAF, the National Italian Americans Foundation, for, you know, being partnered with us and creating not only this event, but our entire series, our Voyage Italian American Stories. Our next event is gonna be in April, and it's gonna be about baseball. So, because of course the baseball season is opening, so we are going to have this event called Home Run, the Italian American Embrace of Baseball. So check that out. But also I would like to let you all know that if you are in Boston or if you are, you know, willing to travel, we are going to have a couple of upcoming events in person so that we can get together, we can socialize a little bit. So we are gonna have the Italian writer Claudia Durazzini on March the 30th in person at the bookstore at 7 p.m. And also on April the 8th at 7 p.m. at our bookstore, we are going to host Anne Goldstein, who is the translator of Elena Ferrante. So you cannot miss these two events. Please check our website because you can see them all in our website. Thank you for your nice comments. Let's see if I can write down here in the chat all our a couple of our upcoming events. And please remember that you are gonna have a 10% discount on this book. You can find it online on iambooksboston.com with the code IMBooks 2022. Okay, so Kirsten.
We also would like to, Alex Suchek mentioned in the comments that yes, St. Joseph's Day is Father's Day in Italy. And 4 days from now, wish all of your Josephs, Josephines, Giuseppes, Giuseppina a buon onomastico.
That's right, Kirsten. Thank you for reminding us. All right, so my friends, yes, Sandra.
My thanks to you, to I Am Books, to Kirsten for allowing me to participate and share this beautiful tradition that I was so privileged to grow up with. And I know everyone who has listened in will share this story. As usual, St. Joseph will make this beautiful tradition grow, just like the hardy fava bean. It continues to grow and continues to nourish in such a beautiful way.
Yes.
Felice.
Thank you, my friends. Thank you, all of you attendees. It's been amazing to have you, so many of you here. I would conclude saying Viva I fava beans and St. Joseph. Arrivederci and see you next time.
Thank you.